Hey, Hal here. Just wanted to tell you we're excited about our partnership with Minus 33. Minus 33 specialized merino wool base layers for outdoor enthusiasts, from tops and bottoms to hats, socks, gloves, and our gear is going to keep you warm and comfortable no matter what adventure you're on, especially those big woods ones. We're a fifth-generation family owned and operated, a New Hampshire woolen textile manufacturer. They have over 106 years of woolen expertise, and they started manufacturing woolen socks, the Mountain Heritage ones, in New Hampshire in 2018, with the idea that a quality product, affordable pricing, and can be worn and loved from season to season, no matter what your experience level or skill is, so no one should feel uncomfortable or ill-prepared in the outdoor community. Having a reliable gear is one of the first steps towards a lifetime of passion or whatever activity it is. And my caveat to that is you got to wear your woolies. Cotton is death.
This is the Big Woods Bucks Podcast. Come explore the big woods and timber in North America with your host, Maine master guide and deer tracking expert Hal Blood. Listen to Hal and co-hosts Lee Libby and Joe Kruse as they unlock the secrets of big woods whitetails. Each episode will provide valuable insights into the tried and true system Hal has used for the last 40 years to scout, locate, and hunt mature big woods bucks. Listen and laugh as the crew discusses Hal's legendary adventures and learn how to apply a lifetime's worth of lessons from the big woods to your own hunting and outdoor adventures.
Welcome to the Big Woods Bucks Podcast. Your host, Hal Blood, sitting down here at Pileland Lodge again with Joe.
Hello.
And today we've got on the CEO.
The big dog.
The big dog. The big kahuna, Chris Dalti.
Yeah. I feel like a big dog.
Yeah. And we'll mix it up a little bit here. We got Neil Pendleton on. We wanted to have him talk a little bit about his film we just released, huh?
Yep, the next one.
The next one. Setting goals, right?
Yeah, that was the premise of it, because it was about my 2022 season, and we really wanted to try to figure out something that would appeal to everybody. And when Brian and I got together and started brainstorming, it just worked out that one of the topics that I talked about at Huntstock was about setting goals for the season, and I shared my goals, and then the film just kind of, everything else, I guess the plan was laid for the season, and everything went according to plan, luckily.
I think it did, right?
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Did you meet every one of them? You did?
Yeah, all three of the goals.
That's
yep.
really cool.
Yeah. So
That was a good film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well
I
done.
mean, that's one thing I've been, I started setting goals back in 2019. Before then, I'd always, kind of focused on hunting target bucks that I'd either known about or had camera pictures of, and I'd hone in on them and try to learn about those bucks and see if I could, kill one of them. And finally, I said, I want to do something a little bit more experience-based and start changing what I was, trying to focus my goals on. And that was the first year I really, I said to myself in 2019, I wanted to become a tracker and really focus on proving that I could, track in the snow and do it. I mean, obviously, after coming to some of the expos and sitting in on a couple of Hal seminars, I got the bug and the itch for it. And so then really it's like I started setting those goals, whether it was tracking, whether it was traveling to a different state, whether it was getting into filming, or even hunting with friends more, something I'd always, a lot of times hunted solo or with my dad. So every year is different goals, and going into last season for 2022, I'd set 3 goals. I had said that I wanted to shoot my 10th patch buck. I wanted to shoot a buck with a bow and preferably get it on film and self-film it. And then I wanted to travel someplace new. And I'd really kind of set that goal as the Adirondacks, but I didn't know how the snow conditions would pan out. And having, a new baby and everything, I didn't know if traveling that far, if the season was going to unfold and allow me to go there. But luckily it's like, after quite a few ups and downs throughout any type of hunting season, luckily it all panned out where I got to have a chance at accomplishing all of those goals and was able to do it.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Well, same way in life. If you don't set any goals, how you know if you're ever going to get anywhere, right? Or if you did get there. Set goals.
So if you could think of one thing, what helped you to transition from, because most of the time before that you were a still hunter / scouter, right? Would you say that?
So still hunting really has never been something that really kind of suited me because I've always been one that I'm on the go. It's like whether it's physically, mentally, I don't really like to sit. I did sitting growing up when I started hunting with my father and grandfather. We'd always sit in the morning and the evenings and did, like some, I guess what we called pushes, but they weren't really drives. They were just a couple people would still hunt through the woods and one or two of us would be on stand in case something got kicked up. And after doing that, growing up all through college, I eventually kind of wanted to spread my wings and start roaming around and getting a little adventurous. And that's when I got into what most people would probably consider still hunting, but I wasn't very good at staying still. I kind of always just thought, hey, over the next hill would be maybe a better spot to stand and have a better lookout. And so I just always kept moving around. And then eventually I think that's what led me to tracking. It's just the perfect thing for it. For somebody who likes to just keep moving, tracking's definitely the hunting style.
So what do you think helped you the most to get to transition from that to from tracking?
I don't know. I mean, I think for me it was just having success after, doing the sitting in the stand. I mean, it hasn't really, I don't know. I think what in some ways was like one of the bigger transitions was going from being a gun hunter and only hunting in Maine where I grew up to then finally, once I was in college, it was finally in my last year in college when I decided to actually say, hey, well, wait a minute. Why am I waiting to go home to hunt? I can hunt here. It's like where I'm living now. Then after I got out of college, I started looking at the dates of the seasons in New Hampshire, and I saw that, wait a minute, bow season starts, about a month and a half before. I can start hunting a lot sooner. So I got a bow back in 2010, got into archery, and so it's always just been, I think looking for new opportunities, I guess is probably really why I got into tracking, because it was a different opportunity for me.
Cool.
Which seminar did you go to? Was it the Sportsman Show where you went to Hal's, or you didn't go to a clinic, did you?
No, actually, the first time I'd ever been to the Maine Sportsman Show was this year. So I'd gone up to the Yankee Sportsman's Classic in Vermont. So
it was his girlfriend at the time, his wife now. I think it was the first time I said, the room was full and there was a couple seats in the front. Right?
Yep. Yeah, we had walked in. The seminar was just getting ready to start, and they dimmed all the lights and shut the doors. And, of course, you walk in and you're trying to find an open chair, and Hal looked over and he said, hey, there's a couple of seats right down here in the front row.
Yeah. Wasn't looking at Neil. I was looking at his wife.
I thought the whole time you were trying to talk to me about hunting. It wasn't me you wanted to talk to?
I said, yeah, come on down the front row here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then the next year, they'd be in the front row again. I didn't even have to ask them.
Yeah.
It was kind of expected at that point.
Like a good student.
I was going to say, I think my wife, it's like, I think at that point, it's like after you had engaged her, she wanted to say, hey, aren't we supposed to sit in the front row?
Oh,
yeah, that's good.
So your hunt was 100% self-filmed, obviously, because you're wearing the GoPro and turning on yourself and everything. It's challenging enough to do it with one, but to get three, I mean, stand hunting's a little bit different because you're sitting there, but still getting all that footage on is always a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those that you have to, back to the setting goals thing, right? I mean, that's a goal that I'd set for myself, and I had, a lot of people that I knew that they'd done filming, but they'd always said, hey, it's something that you might not want to necessarily stick with. It's like if you try it, see if you're really into it, because it's going to cost you some deer, and you're going to get pretty frustrated. And, I mean, it did, and it has. I mean, the first buck in the film, he's called the Lucky Buck because I missed him. The first time I ever tried to self-film was in that same spot exactly a year before. It was within an hour exactly. And it was in the same bedding area. I had no real intel of why I should be there. I didn't have any pictures of him from that year except for in August. I had one game camera picture of him, so I knew he was still alive. But it just looked at the annual patterns. Weather conditions were about the same temperature drop in the evening. Wind was blowing the same general direction, and said, let's roll the dice and see if, the same thing happens one year later. And
pretty good testament to how they're a creature of habit a lot of times, especially in those situations. It's probably not as much up here in the big woods, but down there, I mean, the same exact day to the year, and he's in the same bedding area, coming through the same. I mean, it was like an instant replay.
Yeah, I mean, I've found at least. I mean, and I know, Hal. It's like Joe. You guys, and Chris. You guys can probably speak to this a little more than me because he has more experience in the big woods. But I've spent a good amount of time in the big woods, and what I've seen that even some of those annual patterns can kind of hold true. It might not be to the exact day, but if it's a signpost, it's like the bucks don't always come to it, but they'll walk by it, and they may go by within that same 1, 2, or 3 days every year, because whether it's they're traveling to a doe group that's going into heat, whether there's a food source somewhere, or whatever that change is, a lot of times that stuff happens right within the same few days every year. So that was something that I keyed in on. And, I mean, that year before, it's like getting into filming, yeah, it definitely costed me. I mean, I saw that buck come out, and I was, calm about the whole thing, but I was just sped up. The adrenaline's going. And for me, it's like when he came out, I'd turned the power on, but then when the camera's booting up, there's a delay before you then have to hit the record button. I was using a Canon Vixia G50, and so I see the screen's lit up, and I'm thinking it's recording. So I'm looking at him in the viewing screen. I'm moving the camera around and making sure it's going to be, a good shot and good footage. And I go to full draw, and at the last second, I look back at the viewfinder, and 25-yard shot, just a chip shot. I let that arrow fly and just missed him. And I couldn't believe it. I knew as soon as the arrow had gone underneath him that I just shot right under him. I'd flinched it and, punched the trigger. And come to find out afterwards, wasn't even recording. When I went to stop the camera and shut off the footage, it turned on. I'm seeing now a blinking red light, and I'm like, you idiot. Yeah. So it was good to get redemption on that buck and have it all work out. But, I mean, even this season, another part of the film is mistakes. I mean, I only went 3 for 8 this season. It's like I had a lot of opportunities to put myself in the right spot, but having a new baby, it's like not getting as much sleep. It's like my head wasn't always in the game. And
when you say 3 for 8,
I had eight opportunities at big bucks, and I messed up on five of them. So a lot of people would say,
is that all? Yeah. I usually mess up on more than that.
But, I mean, yeah, you got to put yourself in the right position to have the opportunities, and so that made me feel good. It's like I was on bucks almost every sit, and, yeah, I screwed up on some good ones, but it still ended up, all in all, being a really good success.
So when will you start? I know you get into the woods early and really start scouting hard. When will you really ramp up on that now? Starting to get about that time, isn't it, in another month or so?
Yeah. So this year is a little bit different just because with the baby, trying to juggle time and trying to figure that out, where I think that's kind of one of my goals for this year is trying to figure out how to juggle time a little bit better and how to spend a little bit less time in the woods and more with the family now. So previous years, it really never ended. That was one thing about me where as soon as the season would end, I'd be getting in the woods to try to learn as much about, when the deer are, moving in the wintertime, seeing the tracks on the ground, finding leftover sign, and do it right out through the spring and summertime. But this year I haven't spent as much time in the woods, so it's going to be, and that's another reason why I got into tracking, because it allows you to not have to necessarily, like stand hunting, put in the time to learn where deer are going to be and when. You can just go out in the woods and find a track and walk up and shoot it.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah, that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
You like that analysis paralysis right there? Except it doesn't make them paralyzed, though.
Yeah.
All those numbers and the dropping temperatures.
It was paralyzing me listening to it.
That's what I was thinking the whole time.
Yeah. Well, it shows you that there's more than one way to skin a cat, too,
Yeah, his formula works for him.
Yeah. Yeah, if anybody's that analytical to keep track of all that stuff, I suppose you can maybe make a rhyme to reason out of it. I never thought that they were, and they're not up here as quite, I guess you call it, patternable or something down there. Or.
Well, and I know a lot of people talk about, like, in smaller pieces of woods, it's like, down in the southern parts of some of the states, it's like they always talk about how deer can be patternable, and it's more learning how to pattern the unpredictability and the lack of a pattern. And that's something that, for me, it took a long time to learn, especially when I started using cameras, because I do a lot of hunting, without cameras, but it was just something that kept me occupied, kept me entertained. I could learn a lot more about deer. And a lot of people, they'd get a picture and they'd want to go ahead and hunt that area immediately, as soon as possible. It's like, because they were excited about it and they said, okay, that buck could be there. But then I sometimes learned that the longer that they're not there, that's when your odds are going up. So it's not really focusing on as much the pattern. It's figuring out, like, where haven't they been, and is there a reason for them to come back sometime soon, like to hit a scrape. It's like, or if there was a signpost rub, it's like they may come back to that area. But a lot of it comes down to the scrapes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed up here, I mean, I put most of my cameras, not that I put a lot, I usually put a couple a year, maybe 3. And I just do it, I don't put the cameras out for the reason you do. I just do it for fun and see what's there and stuff. But because I never thought here that you could figure a rhyme to reason to when they're coming, I just figured if a buck was coming to a certain signpost 3 or 4 times out of the season, then you knew he was there more often, And then some of them, quite frankly, they're there once. you'll see that one buck will be the whole season. You'll see him once at a signpost. They get occupied, and they got the older ones got a bigger territory, and usually that's the way that works. But so I just put them out and pick them up, and look at them, and I never tried to figure out any rhyme or reason where they was going to any certain place. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think, you've probably done a little bit of that probably, but it's from a different aspect. For me, it was thinking about where I could sit. And sitting is a lot different because you're spending a lot of time just waiting, right? And for you, it's like you probably have those spots where you pick up tracks, right?
Yeah, I just cut through the way I pick up tracks. I have a route I'm going to figure out for the day. Not figure it out. I'm just going to make every day when I go in the woods, I don't care if I'm bare ground or snow or picking up a track, I make a big loop for the day. I never go in and out of the woods. I'm going to make a great big loop for the day and be back to the truck at night.
But within that loop, though, is there spots that, you've kind of seen, year after year where, there'll be bucks crossing through a certain area, or whether it's crossing a brook in the same spot or a bend in, road?
There's certain places they cross. But I usually run my places where I know where the signposts are, because anything that's going to be going to a signpost, you're going to pick it up if you do that. You don't have to go right to the signpost, but if you cut through those areas where there's, certain signposts, whether they're up along a brook or whatever, if you follow that brook up or cut up over a saddle in the ridge or a mountain or something and make a loop.
I heard you talk about on one of the recent podcasts about some of those benches, too. It's where you find those signposts.
Yep. A lot of people think they're just down, low, down in the bottoms and along the bogs and streams in the bottoms, but I find just as many or maybe even more higher up, up on the ridges or shelves on the mountains or something.
Yeah, because I heard you talk about the way visually it's like that. It stuck in my head when you talked about it. Something that I'd always seen a lot, and I'd find myself when I hunt big woods, I'd drop pins on onyx of places that piqued my interest, and then sometimes you get to a spot and you find a signpost, and all of a sudden I'd pull out onyx, oh, maybe I should mark this signpost. I already have a waypoint here, and then I'd look at it, and it was because the way you described it, the contour lines, they'd be a certain distance apart, then they'd spread out, and that would show the kind of on a hillside, there'd be a flat spot where you talked about the seeds depositing and those ash trees would grow.
Yeah, because any of them benches is where the water settles out. Any of the water running out of the side of the hills, whether it's a ridge or a mountain, it runs down, and when it gets to those flatter areas, it seeps out more, and that's what makes the wet ground that brown ash can grow in. And I don't know, I'm sure the history of that woods is birds or bears or something got the seeds up there, you know what I mean? Because they're not going to blow themselves up the mountain to get there, but something lugged a seed up. And I always look at it as any type of a seep or a brook. If you find signposts or even just brown ash up at the head of that seep will have brown ash the whole length of it, because the seeds float down in the water in the spring, and some of them take hold and some don't. And then you might find other seeps that there's no brown ash in those seeps.
Yep.
There's no rhyme to reason of it either. People say, well, how do you know which ones? I go, I have to go look.
Yep. No
rhyme to reason, because some of them you think would be the greatest place, and they're not. And I know by taking people in them deer clinics, I have to find an easy way, because I can look at it and I can just automatically tell you now if it's a place where there'd be a brown ash or signpost. I can just tell by the woods. But it's hard to think about how to teach that to somebody else, even when you got them in the woods there, because I'm seeing a certain thing in the woods in this combination of trees that grow there, or lay of the land, or whatever it is. It's really quite hard to explain. But
yeah, it's experience-based.
Yeah, but when I can show the people, I can sit down and explain to them why, and I think they get it pretty well. They say they do anyway, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I just heard that I could relate back to seeing those spots and, marking them, just seeing a terrain feature, looking on a map. But then the way you had explained it, it made sense why that terrain feature would have a lot of more movement or, deer coming through there. Yeah,
but you can also, there'll be a lot of wet areas up in the mountains and even them flats that there isn't any, and when there isn't any, when I look at it, I can see why, because it's usually a mixture of spruce and fir, the softwood in that area, and not hardwood, because you can have a shelf and it's all hardwood down the length of it, and there won't be any.
Yep.
Usually when it's like that. But if you have that mixture of spruce and fir and maybe a cedar here and there, and then of course there's always some birch and white birch, yellow birch mixed in, maybe a few maples. That mixed growth is where you're most likely to see it, and then it's even more obvious why they would make the signposts, even though there's brown ash there. In some places they don't make signposts there because they're not comfortable doing it there, but in that spruce and fir, that thicker growth, they're comfortable. It's the thicker area.
Security,
yeah, it's a security thing for them, and anytime they can follow a bench and stay in security cover.
Benches are,
it's natural.
To me, benches are everything. I love it when I find a place like that with that little bit of mixed growth, and I really get on, especially if there's no snow and you're just still hunting as high alert time and going along those, because a lot of times you can be up above and hunt them like that, kind of looking down. But I also find even with the moose, you find most of your sheds, they're sitting on those benches. If you find a spot where it's rolling up and then flattens out and goes up, you're always going to find more everything.
The
on those.
Animals travel the woods, the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
They don't go out of their way to make it hard to get through the woods. It'd be like us. It'd be like us going up and down the stairs all the time to get things. Yes, we have to go up there. We have to go up if we come in the basement and go up to the upstairs, or we want to go to the upper stairs. You go there, but you don't spend a lot of time there going up and down. If you go up, you get what you want, then you live or whatever on your first
good
floor.
Analogy.
Most of it.
Just pacing back and forth while we're talking on the phone, going up and down stairs.
Yeah. Yeah, so and you think about it logically too, if you can see it on a topo map better, how logically for any deer, not just the bucks, but any deer to travel around ridges and mountains, because if they're trying to get around a mountain, they're not going to drop down, up or down to get there because it's harder going. They're going to follow the contour. It's the path of least resistance. They'll go through the saddles and the ridges because they have to go up, not as far up to get through the ridge. Makes sense. It's all, if you study topo maps and you'll see it. You can pick out where they're going to be.
But it helps to have that mixed growth because they're more comfortable. Or else all you'll see is them hot-footed through those areas where there's not a lot of, where they would be comfortable.
Well, a buck will travel through the hardwoods anywhere, but it's too random. So you're not going to, if you got a hardwood ridge that's a half a mile or a mile long, there's nothing to make them walk in any one place there. Mm-hmm. Just random. They walk anywhere. One time they might go up through one area and another time another area to get to the other side. But when you get in the transition zones where they're comfortable, they're liable to be there. And quite frankly, the does will spend more time there. I mean, does are the same way. They don't live out in the open hardwoods that much, They live on the edges of it, and they like that softwood shelter too,
And that's one cool feature that I've seen about Onyx that I kind of, talked about me being a little bit analytical, right, Hal? So
not you.
I can picture Neil sitting at home all night long with his Onyx out, just scrolling around and zooming in and out.
So, one feature on it is, and it works better on a computer if you pull it up on a screen versus on your phone, is the 3D feature.
Yeah.
Where you can pull it up, and so if I have a track that I've followed of a buck around, if you go 10 miles in a day on a buck track, you pull it up later on, and with your mouse, you can click as you're going on that track, and you can pan up and down a mountain and see how they navigated through it. And you'll see a lot of times, like those transition lines, it's like of the different types of woods, softwoods to hardwoods, they're walking right along the edge of that, and where they come up and they might mill around, might be on one of those benches. But it's cool to kind of see it in 3D afterwards, what it looks like.
It's actually a good way to use the tool, is looking at it afterwards.
Yeah.
I never turn my track on when I'm tracking, only because I always think about battery life, but it probably doesn't eat that much if I just have it running that.
Well, so that was one big thing at Spring Thaw when we did that, and at the table that I was sitting at, Stephen and I were doing it, was looking at Onyx and talking about the usefulness of it. And that was one thing that a lot of people kept saying was the battery life of their phone. They're worried about their phone dying throughout the day. So one thing that I have on my phone is an external battery case. So I have the case for it itself has a battery pack built into it, so I can get over twice the battery life out of my phone. So I don't have to worry about when I'm using Onyx about it draining the battery because I have extended battery life. So that's definitely a recommendation that I recommend to guys during hunting season. Get one of those battery cases.
Yeah.
Can you get one of those in waterproof?
It's not waterproof. It's just like a regular case because I don't use one of those otter boxes or something waterproof. But yeah, those cases though they work great. Gives you a lot of extra.
Yeah, and the phone itself is typically the newer ones are all waterproof anyway. So
yeah.
The otter boxes and all that are kind of old clunky.
Yep.
Can't hear very good.
No, yeah.
I don't know what it must be certain phones, but I've never run out of battery in mine, and I don't even put it on airplane mode.
Yep.
Do
you put the track feature on though when you're out in the woods?
No.
No, I was going to say that's what drains a lot of the battery life, and that's what people talk about is they'll put that track feature on,
okay,
so you can see like the lines of where you've walked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care about that really, because to me, I guess I'm more old school, maybe just built differently, but it doesn't matter where I tracked a buck before. If there was any special part about it, I'll remember it anyways.
Yeah.
But just to see where I went, it's a meaningless detail to me, really.
Yeah.
I try not to clutter my mind with stuff like that, The general area I go or whatever, yeah, I went through this gap over here or whatever, and I'll remember that if I get there again. But other than that, for me, there's no value in running that track. That's just me, though. I know a lot of people like it, and they like to see where they are and see how far they've gone. And
that was in the past. I used it for that reason, just as general, curious how far you're going for the day, and then you realize that you never do anything with those tracks. So just delete them. You never go back. But like what Neil is saying, if you wanted to go back and you're trying to figure out
it's kind
what
of
the deer likes.
Yeah, some of it's education, but a lot of it's entertainment too. It's like if you want to just learn more about deer and what they're doing. One of the ways that I've used it is if I'm on like a really big buck track, I'll turn the track at the end of the day to brown. So I can actually, if over the years, if I've been in an area hunting and I can see, it's like, okay, well, these bucks, it's like they may wrap around this mountain one way, but they may cross, it's like all in a certain area. There's like an intersection of those tracks. So that can be another key spot if you want to try to pick up a track to go back to look at. So, yeah, just stuff like that. It's like you can see those overlapping spots on the tracks.
maybe it's just me, but I remember that stuff anyway.
I don't have probably as good a memory as you do, Hal.
That's the only thing I got a memory for is those type of things, really. And I don't know why that is. I've been like that all the time, but I'll go through a place one time and 10 years later go through and I'm like, I remember this spot.
Yeah.
Hey, Hal here. I want to talk a little bit about our partnership with OnX Hunt. I've been using it for a while now, and if anybody knows me, they know I'm not a very techie person, but the OnX app is it's a real time saver. I remember the days when we poured over topo maps everywhere we was going to go and stuff, and I don't do that quite as much anymore. Where it's really helped me is scouting, whether it's deer scouting, a moose, or even turkey hunting in the spring, which I do. It really helps out. I don't have to spend as much time running around the truck burning up the gas. I'm just basically using my OnX. Got it on my phone. Don't even carry a GPS anymore. So I just download the areas where I'm going to be hunting, whether it's up north moose hunting, and I use it mostly on the satellite imagery. I like to see the cuts and the clearings and the turkey hunting, the hidden fields and stuff. But everybody's using it now, from the game wardens to land surveyors, and just a great tool. And with our partnership with OnX, if you use a code BWB, you're going to receive 20% off on your first premium or elite memberships. And you just go to onxmaps.com/hunt. You'll be glad you did. Good luck on the trail.
Big Woods Bucks is devoted to promoting the best equipment for tracking and still hunting the big woods. Part of that equation for success is the sights that sit on your hunting rifle. We've chosen Skinner Sights as the company to produce our custom-built BWB Tracker Series peep sight. It's constructed of solid steel, has our custom ghost ring, and was co-developed by some of the best trackers in the world. To get yours, go to bigwoodsbucks.com and click on the optics.
Well, and then, Chris, what about you? Because I know you're gearing up for this year. You're saying big things are going to happen for you this season.
Yeah,
So.
Neil, ask
Put me on the spot.
A lot of talk there, Neil. That's what I'm saying
Nice.
because
you guys are ganging up on me.
Well,
Joe was just saying he has everybody's back. I don't know. Is that stabbing or what?
We were talking about setting goals, right, to start off this
Neil,
podcast.
so get him to write his goals down and give you a copy so you
I'll
can
do
hold
that.
him accountable.
I'll do that. No, I just that in the past I've had a few challenges with my dad and stuff, but now he's gone. So, the hardest thing for me was coming up here and spending time away when I had that responsibility. I couldn't just ask Deb to take care of Sam, and so I've gotten a lot more freedom. I miss my dad, but it's a different part of my life now, so I got a lot more freedom. So I plan to be. I told Hal, even if I have to sleep under the truck, I'm coming up here to give myself a chance.
Yeah.
I want to kill a buck tracking this year. That's
right.
my goal, is to kill.
we
a
have
buck
a record
tracking
of
this
it
season.
now.
Yep.
It's recorded.
I'll do it. I'm doing it for you, Neil.
All right, yeah.
Well, I'm actually doing it for me, but
No, I know. I've been getting on your case, though.
I know
but,
you
yeah,
have, baby.
yeah.
You've been good. You've been a good push for me. Yeah. I was thinking about patterning, like even tracking. Though we're patterning, but it's like more real time. Only in that we're learning that particular buck's personality as we travel down that track. So
Yep.
you can call it something else, but it's patterning, even behavior of deer. You're learning the behavior of the deer. It's different than down where we live, but up here, you can use that to your advantage too.
And you can even use it down in the southern parts of the state.
Well, you
it's
can.
like where we are, too. It's like, and that's why I was saying when the season ends, that's when I like to get out and follow tracks around because you can learn how they use the woods because you have the map right there in front of you.
Yeah.
You always think, like you talk about deer doing certain little things, and the one that sticks out to my mind was a couple years ago. I came back after hunting, and I told Hal, I tracked this deer today, and he stepped on rocks everywhere he went. And Hal said, I followed the same deer. And sure enough, we started talking. It was the same area. The deer just liked to step on rocks.
Yeah.
He would go out of his way to step on boulders and walk up over them.
That's a
and it's
personality
odd.
trait that deer has that's important.
Yeah, that's you can figure that out once in a while. That you can say it's been my whole life. There's only been a few times that I said, I know I've tracked this buck before. Now Rick does it more than I do because I don't hunt in the same spots very often. You know what I mean? I get bored going to the same places, so everybody knows I just talk about it. I don't know where I'm going to turn out my driveway in the morning, then I decide where I'm going and turn right here and turn left. So I never know where I'm going. So I'm not hunting the same spots very often to know I'm on the same buck. But there is been times that I've said, I'm sure I wouldn't been on this buck because there was little crazy places that they go, And you can remember it from that. But other than that, it still all boils down to you still got to catch up to them in the right place and the right time to kill them anyway. And the odds of being in the right place or the same place and the same time on two different times is slim. You know what I mean? It don't happen that way usually.
So one thing, too, that I don't know if I've heard you really talk about, Hal, but one thing that when I first started getting into tracking, dabbling, because where my dad's camp was over in down East Maine, it's like there wasn't a lot of snow there, so I got rare opportunities to do it. But I remember the first couple times that I did, I got on a buck that it was one of the trickiest things I'd ever seen. He kept backtracking on his track, and he did it all day long. Where I'd look down on the snow, and all of a sudden I'd see it's like his track end. I kept scratching my head, like he didn't sprout wings and fly. It's like, what is he doing? And I found out he kept backtracking, and he was trying to do it because I think he learned it. That's how he eluded. It's like whether it was coyotes or whatever else was to backtrack.
That's how they do it. A lot of bucks do that.
But what are some of the biggest tricks that you've seen, like a buck pulling over all the years, like some of the trickiest things that they've done?
A lot of the ones that will backtrack like that, they'll backtrack, and a lot of them will just come back and then they swing, they turn off. But a lot of them will actually backtrack back and jump.
Yep.
They'll jump off to the side, make a big bound. So if you think about it logically to a coyote, even if he figures out when he comes to the end, a coyote, like any dog, even a hound would do that, chasing a rabbit or anything, would come back on the track a ways and try to figure it out, come back. Because my rabbit dogs always did that. If they lost it, they'd come back on the track and then make swings. But by that buck jumping a big leap off to the side, that coyote wouldn't see that track in the snow or even smell it unless he got, a buck can make a bound, 30 feet. So it would take a coyote longer to figure that out. And that's why they do it, because it just puts distance. Then the buck gets further ahead, and finally the coyote's probably going to give up, if he does that enough.
And it seems like when they always do it in the furs, where you can't see the track when you're standing on the.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to really look around, and I've been in situations where it's a head scratcher. You think, well, it didn't just disappear. It's got to be here, but they're pretty nifty when they jump off like that sometimes in the furs, and takes a minute to figure it out.
Over like a rock or a blow down, or
yeah.
One of the biggest things when I was first learning the track, I got on this track in Rhode Island, and he got into a brook.
Snows there?
Yeah, sometimes it does. And I lost him. And it was like you said, I thought he grew wings. So that night I called Hal up, and I'm like, I don't know what happened. He goes, well, how far did you go down the brook? And I said, I don't know, 25, 30 yards. He goes, why don't you just keep going, dummy? He went one way or the other, and he got out of that brook sometime. But that particular buck must have been chased by coyotes down there, and he jumped in the brook, and that's how we figured out how to lose him, is get in that brook and go as far as he felt comfortable going. Just the inexperience. When I was younger, I didn't know how far they would actually travel in a brook.
Yeah, that was what happened to me once. The biggest buck that I've ever seen. It's like the one that still haunts me that I didn't pull the trigger on. I had him in the scope for a jump with a muzzle loader, and I should have put it right up his rear, but I was waiting to tuck it in. If he turned just a little bit, I was going to tuck it in behind his ribs, but never got the opportunity, and I spent the whole rest of the day on his track. And he went into a brook, and he crossed the brook and came out. Then he backtracked into the brook, and then he came out of about 25 yards down, backtracked into the brook again. Well, that was going to the right, going downstream of the brook. So I kept thinking, okay, he has to come out, as Hal told you, we'll keep going down the brook. So I kept going down the brook for a couple hundred yards. He never came back out of it. And I'm sitting there scratching my head the whole time. Well, he went across the brook, came back into it, went to the right, went out of it, came back into it, so he's going to the right. Well, I never thought to go to the left. So a half an hour later, I'm sitting there scratching my head trying to figure it out. Well, he then went upstream about 100 yards and then came out of the brook before I got back on his track.
Yep.
So they do some sneaky stuff.
Oh, yeah. That's the water like that is probably the most common thing they'll do. And it doesn't have to be in a big brook. It could be in a skidder rut that's got water in it down through the woods, an old skidder rut depression that, when we get a lot of water in the fall, it holds water. And then when we get them first snows, that won't have snow in it. So they'll see that, and they'll walk down the water down that rut until it comes to the end, and they just keep going. But if a coyote's following the track, they hit the water, they don't know what to do. So that's just how they learn it. Yeah. They'll also swim ponds. I've tracked many of them to ponds, and they just bail in and swim across. And the coyote don't know how to go around and find it. They can't logic that out, But those are probably the two most things they do most often for those tricks. And then once in a while you'll have a buck that there's just something really, and you can't figure out why they do it, but they just have a little, I'd call it more of a idiosyncrasy, and I don't think it's necessarily from trying to escape a coyote, I don't think, but there was one, I've told a story before, maybe I've written about it, is one that I never shot the buck. I had him standing in his bed at like 20 yards, and I couldn't see his rack, and I knew it was him, but I couldn't see what. I had just a brown piece of fur I was looking at, and if I'd had my rifle, it was muzzleloader season, I'd have shot anyways because I'd have got another shot. But with your muzzleloader, you got to make one shot count. And so anyways, I didn't take the shot till I saw his head swing in the antlers, and I knew he was taking off, and I swung up, and I knew when I pulled the trigger I was shooting over him. When he went down to bound, I shot over him. But anyways, he had a kind of funny thing he did was every time he was going to lay down, he would take a few bounds to the left, and I don't know why that is. It didn't make any sense. He'd be walking along, and then he'd turn left and make a couple of bounds. He'd walk over about 50 yards and lay down.
You had a little routine, huh?
Yeah, he did, and I've never seen another one before or since that did that, but that's what he did. And then ended up tracking him till it was almost dark. It was 3 o'clock, and I was a good 3 miles back in, and it was we was leaving for Ontario the next day. I think you and Mike Featherstone was waiting on me that day.
I do remember that.
Yeah, he's a big one too. He's a big, tall rack, dark horned one there. And I was sick about not just taking the chance on it, but I didn't want to. But anyways, yeah. So that one's gone, and the other one was that Brutus buck I shot a few years ago. And I don't know if he always did it, but he was so tired anyways. But I got him figured. He drug his feet when he was going to lay down because he would be hot-footing it. I was after him, and then as soon as he started dragging his feet, he was going to lay down within 100 yards. So that's how I ended up killing him. When he started dragging his feet that last time again, I just went easy, and he went down the skid road to the end of the thick. You couldn't see on either side, and he turned left around some firs. It was a little bit more open, and I didn't take the step out there. I just peeked around. I could see him laying there looking back. So as soon as he's dragging his feet, that just all the dragging the feet meant was he was just so tired. He slowed down, and every time he slowed down, he was going to lay down,
If only more bucks did that.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it would be easy.
For all the times you get burned, though, it almost like a lot of us have that competitive spirit, so you can take it either two ways. You can say, "Oh, I'm never gonna, it's never gonna work out for me," or you can say, "I'm gonna get him the next time," because I learned that from that. He burned me this time, but he's not gonna. And what I mean by that is, like, if I would never give up. I would always try to, unless it got dark and I had to get out of there, I would always try to find out where he came out of that brook. I don't care if I had to walk 200 yards one way and go back down and go 200 yards. I'm going to find where he came, where he left, where he got away from me.
Yeah.
You got to have that, like, extra push. It means all the difference in the world.
Well, it's just a process of elimination anyways. That's all you're doing. You're just eliminating the possibilities because it went somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same way with sorting tracks out, when they get into them. You just have to put the work in to do the process of elimination. And that's where most people give up. They're not willing to do the work and put the time in because, you might have to walk lot of extra steps to get it figured out. You're back and forth and in and out. But he went somewhere,
Yeah.
A lot of times that's where guys, that's the end of their track for the day.
Most everybody.
They can't figure it out if you get into a bunch of them. And I've done that in the past, especially, when you're first learning and you get discouraged, you don't know any better. But like you said, they went somewhere.
Yeah.
Their tracks are there somewhere.
Well, and that was one thing for me that I had tracked before, but really starting to take all the knowledge that I had learned and become a tracker in 2019. Over 2019, 2020, 2021, last year in 2022, it's like that experience to get into when there's a mess of tracks to figure out how to sort it out. And you hear circle around. It's like, make like a wide circle out around it and see where the buck comes at all the tracks. But some of that stuff at first, it was like, all right, like I didn't really know what that kind of meant by the circling out around. But when you think about it, if 5 deer come into an area, there's gonna be 5 sets of tracks that go out of it somewhere. So it's just finding that hopefully the biggest buck track that was going into it. You figure out where he comes out and keeps going. But the more I did it though, instead of standing there for a half an hour, 45 minutes, sitting there looking at the ground, you just make that big circle and you're on your way, and your gut tells you're on the right track and just go with it.
But you also got to believe that if you were careful making that circle and you didn't see his track come out, he could be in there. Could be held with the doe or something like that. So
yeah, he could be around.
Yeah.
Well, if you make a whole circle, he is in there.
Yeah. Well, you could have missed the track.
You're not supposed to do that.
I know, but we all do. Even you, dude. I've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, but that's the good thing about that is the circling is usually you're going to gain on that buck because the whole process of a track is you got to gain time or you'll never catch them because until they stop and they got to do something to cost them the time.
Well, and that was one of the biggest pieces of advice that I had taken from you, Hal, because following deer tracks around in snow, but really trying to catch up to that buck, it's like knowing that they're walking while you're walking and you have to close the gap on them. It's like to really pick up the pace and go. It's like to finally catch up to them. That was something that it took me. It's like a couple of years to really figure out how to close that gap. And even then, because I was kind of worried about when is it time to slow down? Because you hear everyone ask when do you actually go into the death creep, whatever you call it, and something that you said earlier in the podcast is that it's all about 2 points meeting at the right time. So you could go as slow as can be, you could be alert as can be, and you could still meet at the wrong spot, right? Or you could bumble and fumble through the woods like an idiot and just happen to he's standing there looking right at you and you can get a shot. So so to what you said, Chris, it's like about getting frustrated. It's like you got to be out there and you just got to stick with it. And as long as you're on that track and you're following it, and I mean, eventually, hopefully you're going to catch up to it as long as you're persistent about it. I
think confidence comes into that. You can catch them. I remember some of the first tracks we ever went on together when I was starting to film them. I didn't know if we were ever going to see them. We had some real long tracks the first few days, and I'm like, oh my God, can we actually do this? And the first time you see one, it's like, oh my God, you can actually do this. And it's a rush.
It's a great feeling.
It's a rush when you see them. Holy mess.
See, that's a lot of things that sometimes people, I think, try to pigeonhole themselves in tracking because they think there's an answer for every situation, and there isn't. There's not one answer for that. But so many people, they're trying to get that answer. I see a lot of it on, because nowadays with social media, everybody's asking each other, what do you think about this? What would you do? Scenarios and all this stuff. And I'm like, maybe it's fun to talk about it. But
it's good to pass the time, yeah.
Yeah, and in the real world, none of that matters because you have to make the decision on what you see at the time, because I don't do the same thing every time. I call it forks in the road. On a track, you're going to make decisions all day long, constantly make a decision.
1,000 decisions a day.
Not all right either.
No. You just have to make one, though. You have to make one, and it's right or wrong, and usually they're wrong. Yep. But sometimes you make the right one at the right time, and you get your chance. But you can't. You have to be willing to just do something and not worry about, is it the right thing or am I going to jump them? Don't worry about any of that because it doesn't matter. I've killed way more bucks after I jumped them than I ever have when they were laying there. That's not the way to get them, really. It's fun. If you can shoot one in the bed, that's a lot of fun, and it's quite an experience to do that. But you got to face the fact that ain't going to happen very often.
Yeah, I mean,
you've got to be really lucky. And the deer did something where he laid in the wrong place, or the conditions are just exactly right. It's blowing or snowing or something to make that happen.
Yeah, I think where a lot of people can go wrong is that they're kind of waiting for that opportunity versus trying to force the issue and make it happen and not go quick enough, and they just start to overthink it.
Usually a buck's laying where you're not going to shoot him laying down. He's just not going to. And a lot of times it's in the thicker stuff or on the knoll in the thick. It's somewhere where he's got some shelter. And I'd rather get him out of there and get him somewhere else where I can get a shot at him,
That was a huge aha moment for me when we started going together, and we'd jump one, and he'd be, now we got a chance. And I'd be like, what?
Well, you're right behind him. Yeah.
No, he just got up and ran away. What are we waiting for? Let's go. But over time, I figured it out is now he's on his feet. And if you give him that 30 minutes, it's a good chance that he's going to go about his business. And then because if you go after him right away, he's waiting for you most of the time. But yeah, that was a big aha moment because it doesn't make sense at first. You think you're going to lose ground, but it's hard to kill him in his bed.
I was talking to some of the guys today. I can't remember who it was today. I was just saying, making that point that I got looking at when I was doing my deer clinics this spring. I always show them, they want to watch some of the films, even though they've seen them. Some of them have seen them, but they all haven't, on YouTube now. And I kind of, we was talking about filming, I guess, because it's like I don't take the camera out when I'm getting close because I don't want to talk or anything. So a lot of my films, the standard thing is I'm talking about I just jumped the buck, I'm going to have my sandwich now, and then the next clip in the film is, well, just shot the buck. I mean, half of my films are like that. So that shows you the point is I'm glad that I jumped the buck. A lot of people are worried about jumping the buck. Well, if you don't jump the buck, you ain't caught up to him yet,
Yeah.
Don't worry about jumping the buck.
I always feel like when there's those days when you get a track right off, first thing in the morning in great conditions, and you say to yourself, I'm definitely going to see this buck. I mean, you're going to jump him.
Oh,
you might not get a shot at him, but you're definitely going to have an encounter.
Oh, yeah.
And that's – and if you – there's a lot of tracks you pick up where you don't have that confidence, whether it's time of day or, time of season or whatever it is. You just know that buck's, probably going to be moving more than likely. But there are certain days, especially later on in the season, when you know that you're at least going to get some action.
Yeah, and you just got to try to cover ground as fast as you can. Just put your head down and go. I mean, that was something that took me a little while to get used to. And I think really that was the time that we hunted in Western Mass, Hal. It's like when I saw how much ground you covered in that day looking for tracks there was it felt like almost 2 feet of snow on the ground. It's like the first time we hunted together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you're just like, I've been over here to this point and, went on top of this area. And it was like, you've covered all that ground already. I mean, you were just looking for a good track, but I mean, you were motoring the whole time. You weren't hunting necessarily. You were just trying to find a track to get on.
Yeah. I'm not, when I'm looking for a track, I'm not looking for deer really. I mean, I pay attention and stuff, but I'm not worried about making noise or any of that stuff.
Well, it's like kind of for me when I bow hunt, right? I mean, I know a lot of guys, they'll walk into their stand with an arrow knocked. It's like, I don't ever jump a buck when I'm trying to go to a spot where I'm hunting, right? So I don't even bother to do that anymore. It's a lot of times I'll have my bow strapped to my backpack. The last thing in my mind is thinking about shooting a deer, walking into the spot I'm going to hunt. So it's the same for you when it comes to the tracking piece. Until you're on that track, you're not, thinking about stumbling through the woods and just bumping into a buck just standing there.
No. I have many a time. So.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
But then I got my track, and it's fresh.
Yeah.
I know I've been talking a lot about the beginning, like when I first started going in, but we'd get on he'd select a track, and we'd get on it, and he'd put his head down and go, and I'd be worried about seeing another deer until I figured out all he's trying to do is close the distance.
Yep.
All he's trying to do is close the distance. And I don't ever remember we've seen a track where a deer was fresh that had just gone by, but I don't ever remember in all those miles we put on together actually seeing a buck that we shot because we were on another track. So it happens rarely. I think it happens.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it's rare.
Yeah.
But, all right, guys. Well, I'm gonna have to get hopping off this. I got to get hitting the road here soon. So I guess I just kind of wanted to, add back to the film and everything. I mean, with it being, talking about goals, I just want to encourage, everyone that watches the film to, set your goals for this upcoming season. Hopefully get you fired up and get you motivated for the season. And, feel free to share those goals. I work in fitness, and part of it's accountability. So, Chris, like you did today,
thanks for hanging me out tonight.
Yeah. we put you out there for
everyone
that's listening to this podcast to hear. Chris is going to, track a buck this year.
There you go.
So yeah, hopefully everyone can, set their goals, share their goals, and then put it out there. It's like, don't be shy, don't be afraid, post it. Yep. And really, I think, from there, it's just put in the work to get it done and have fun doing it. So,
cool. You want to know what my goal is for this year?
What do you got, Hal?
Get my grandson one tracking.
There you go.
That's a great goal.
That's a good goal.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm sure Ryland likes that goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we came close last year. It wasn't the one we were tracking, but he shot at one that jumped in front of us when we was tracking one, but he missed it. But
have you written it down yet?
Have I written it down? I got to get him to write it down.
All right.
No, I got to write it down. It's my goal, not his. But
it sounded like it was one of your goals to help him, though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But he can. He's got to go to school too. That's kind of a inhibitor there, but his mother's usually pretty good about that. He homeschools, so
that's good. Yeah.
I use that as a motivating factor because my kids homeschool too. So I'm like, we're going to go for 1 or 2 weeks, but you better get your work done. So you can't wait to get started on grade 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, what about you? What do you got for goals for this season? I
Joe.
know what I want
Joe.
all my goals for you to be based on our conversations.
My goals, it's not as much about deer right now just because of the way our seasons happen. But so I'm going back to Alaska in September, and then I come back a week later. I've got a tag here, which I'll be hunting with my bow this time. My daughter's going to be with me. She's going to be
for
my
moose.
sub for moose.
Yeah.
So my goal that I have in my mind right now is doubling up on moose in September and the one here in Maine being with the bow. Yeah. I'm not shooting it with a gun.
Or a handgun, right?
Yeah. I'm going to leave that for Shanzy.
All right.
I can't steal his dream. But, I did it before. In 17, I was fortunate enough to have one and a tag in Maine, and I brought my bow and I hunted till Saturday. We had opportunities that I could have shot one with a gun before then, but with a bow it didn't happen. 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon. I picked my gun up. I ended up shooting a bull with 20 minutes left in the season that had I had my bow with me, I would have shot with my bow. But I gave up on at 3 o'clock, I gave up on it. I'm not doing that this year. It's going to be a bow to the end. If I don't get a moose, I don't get a moose. But that's the primary goal that I have in my mind now for the season.
Nice.
He'll get a hold of Sam and get his goals down.
Yeah, no, I'm looking
Put his
forward to
feet
hearing
to the
those
fire.
goals. Yeah. Well, hopefully all the team members will share their goals
Yeah.
and put them out there, and we look forward to hearing everyone else's goals,
Yeah.
and hopefully they share them. I think it'd be awesome not only have people post, but, make and send videos to us, too. It's like to do a little, what do you call it? Not collaboration, but a collage. It's like of, videos and put it together of everyone's goals. It'd be awesome to get it going for the season. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
I still have my ongoing goal, I set a few years ago. Did you know what that one was?
I'm trying to remember. What is it, Hal?
That was to shoot 20 more. When I turned 60, I set a goal to shoot 20 more track in the time I was 80.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
So I'm on track still.
Where are you?
5. I got 15 more.
How old are you?
66.
There you go.
So I'm on track for one a year, but probably before I get into my very far into my 70s, I maybe ought to try to go to a couple of states.
You have to double some up, I think.
Double some up a little bit, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, Neil, thanks. That was a great film. Good work
thanks.
on
Yeah,
that.
I hope everyone enjoys it. And I just want to thank Brian Connor. He did an awesome job. It's like on the editing, motivating me to do some of the narrations for it, because it's not always the funnest part is, doing all the extra work after the actual hunting part and the filming. Yeah, that's more enjoyable than the homework, I guess, afterwards.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I don't know when the release is going to be. I know we did see a film today, another one. That was pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah.
That I
Pretty
would imagine.
emotional.
Yeah, I don't know what the plan is for release on Mike's film, but boy, that's a good one.
I'll say I came in late. Unfortunately, I missed it, so I was told I have to wait till it comes on
you
YouTube.
did.
Yeah, there you go.
When I walked in the room, right as the the Big Woods Bucks logo was coming up at the end, the film just ended. I was looking around the room, and there was some
Pretty
There
somber.
were some watery eyes. wasn't
there was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, "What the heck? Did somebody just die? Like, what happened here?" Yeah.
It is
Almost.
pretty darn
Yeah.
good. Brian, well, Mike did a great job capturing the emotion, but Brian did a real good job editing it, and
Yep.
Yeah.
that was really good. So
Yeah, he's doing an awesome job with the editing, the music selection. It's like just how to tell the story. It's like that's a big part of it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, hopefully everybody's liking it, and so that'll be on YouTube pretty quick. Mikey's, I'm sure he's got it scheduled in pretty quick, and so if you haven't subscribed to that yet, you better. Oh yeah, you got to subscribe and then get the ding for the
your
bell,
honk
ding the bell for notifications and all
You do
that.
the honking of all that stuff, and right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do that, all of that. And,
He told us that he's going to start ramping things up again, so stay tuned. We got some good stuff coming.
Put out a bunch of articles too, right?
Yeah, bunch of articles.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So,
The other thing I'd mention before we jump off of here is back when we first started these podcasts, and I can't believe we're coming up on 6 years.
yeah, a couple more podcasts, and we'll be
So
6 years.
we got to have some kind of a contest for that. We'll think up something
Yeah.
to that and have a giveaway for that one. But
time flies.
it's
huh?
6 years. I thought.
It's gonna. Well, no, we're going to be going into our 6th year.
Okay,
so we're going to
5
be
years you've
finishing
been
our
doing
5th.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
we're finishing
That's a
our
lot.
5th.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 5 years. I thought 6. I said, how can it be 6? But it doesn't matter.
Well, 5 years is a lot,
5
too.
years is quite a bit. But I remember when we started, we were doing we were doing a bunch of had people, ask questions, and we'd answer some questions on the podcasts, and we're going to start doing that again. So, any of you out there got questions again, you want or topics even, maybe I know some people have sent topics, and we try to fit them in and cover them the best we can at times. But if you've sent me any in the last whenever year or whatever, and if we haven't gone over it, send it back to me, because my emails get buried once they get past the first 10 or 20. They're gone again. So
Should we send it to you or send it to Joe?
me,
You think? Yeah.
yeah. Well, you can send them to me and Joe.
Yeah.
But
Joe, what's your email address?
Joe@lakeparlinlodge.com.
All right.
yeah, and
Well, then too, they can also drop it in the comments for
Yep.
no,
this podcast, right?
Yeah,
Don't do that.
it should go to a central, so we can at least
Yeah.
get them all. Because it'd be scattered around. It'd be
if I
hard to
don't
keep
see
up.
them on my email,
Post the questions everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, but if I don't see it on my email, I'm not going to be dealing with it because I don't look around everywhere. Usually somebody's got to tell me, hey, you got a comment to answer on Facebook or YouTube or something. But so yeah, email them. I'll start a folder with them, and we'll get the question of the week going or whatever. And so we want to make sure we're covering what you want to hear about. And sometimes we don't realize there's even obscure things that we take for granted that maybe people don't realize or want to hear more about. So
probably they're just obscure to us.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Probably common to a lot
yeah,
of people.
That's what I mean. And now that we've gone into it this long, quite frankly, I forgot about half the stuff we've talked about.
It's okay to talk about it again, though.
Yeah, I suppose it. Sometimes I feel funny about repeating. I'm thinking, well,
right.
you already talked about that once.
But it's like reading a book. You read a book a second time, you pick something up that you missed the first time. So
yeah.
And I think it's normal anyway. Podcasts that I listen to, they talk about a lot of the same things. If you listen to them for a long time, it's a lot of the same stuff. It's just natural.
All right. Well, send your questions in or your comments or ideas, and we'll see what we can do. Till next time, good luck on the trail.
Hi, everyone. Team member Mark Sheeran here. I've been helping people solve their addictions for the last 34 years. In 2017, we published the revolutionary non-12-step book, The Freedom Model for Addictions. If you'd like a free paperback copy sent directly to you, go to freebook.freedommodel.org. That's freebook.freedommodel.org. All right, take care.
Hey guys, Joe here. Wanted to take a few minutes to talk about Lake Parlin Lodge. We're a 4-season lodge located just south of Jackman. We've got cabins, lodge rooms, mini lodge. We're a big snowmobile destination in the winter, full restaurant, bar, all the amenities that you need for your trip. Open obviously through the summer, right on the lake. Kayaks, canoes, all included with the cabin. We also do a lot of weddings, so if you're looking for a destination wedding, we can do a wedding up to 200 people. And, of course, we've got our hunting season, moose season, deer season. So check us out. We're at lakeparlinlodge.com.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Till next time, good luck on the trail.